Good morning and welcome to our first annual New American Leadership Academy Alumni Summit. Woo! I'm Carla Williams Scott, Director of the Department of Neighborhoods, and it is so great to be here this morning to see so many of you again today. We started NALA when we became a department in 2016, and I think we did our first cohort in 2017. And many of you I had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with, and then we had a couple of cohorts where we were all on Zoom and WebEx. So some of you, if I don't recognize you without a mask or being in the little square, please charge it to my head and not my heart. But I appreciate each of you for investing your time this morning with us to reconnect with your fellow alumni and to continue on your leadership journey. I appreciate Mayor Ginther and Councilmember Barroso de Padilla for their strong support of NALA and for joining us here today. We have an impressive group in this room today. With connections to 5 continents and 38 different nations, you are helping to make Columbus a global city. The latest U.S. Census illustrates how increased diversity has had a positive impact on education, entrepreneurship, and health and science technology sectors. In addition, this also makes our neighborhoods stronger and more vibrant. Since NALA started, we've had 6 different cohorts. Nearly 120 highly skilled and talented leaders have participated. Several of them have gone on to be involved in organizations such as our area commissions. And I want to just highlight a few that have gone on to do some great and impressive things. Buwan Parkerel, and I always mess his name up. I'm sorry, Buwan. He was a 2018 cohort, and he is a Reynoldsburg City Council member, elected after the NALA graduation. Kauthar Musa, 2019 spring cohort, is on the Northeast Area Commission. Mark Fekwere joined the Neighborhood Civic Association while in a NALA cohort, and Alpha Tongar sought CRC appointment after the NALA graduation. Right? Diana Azarian joined the City of Columbus after the NALA graduation. Anissa Liban joined Columbus City Council and is currently legislative aide to Council Member Shayla Favor. And Maria Cortez, who's with us this morning, joined the administration staff in the mayor's office, and also she participated in NALA. So our NALA graduates are doing great things. NALA alumni are well respected and have advocated for and advanced causes that are vital to the success of our neighborhoods. Your work promotes collaboration to uplift one another and encourage others to take action and be civically engaged. With this summit, we want to create an opportunity for everyone to reconnect and gain new insight that will help each of you to be even more impactful in your community. I would like to thank Abdi Sofe from my team for all that he has done to pull this wonderful program together for you. Along with my Deputy Director, Todd Defender, for they have spent countless hours getting this together for us. So thank you, gentlemen. To kick us off this morning, we will begin with a panel discussion that promises to be insightful and inspiring. Again, I appreciate Mayor Ginther, City Council Member Lourdes Barroso de Padilla, Columbus Urban League President Stephanie Hightower, and Mr. Adrian Sullivan, Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Worthington Industries, for joining us this morning. These individuals have a wealth of knowledge and experience from government, nonprofit, and business communities to share with you. I also want to thank WBNS 10 TV anchor Angela Ann for serving as our moderator. Among her many career achievements, Angela co-founded a news magazine program called China Near and Far. Biographies for all of our speakers are located in your folder. And now I would like to invite Angela Ann, our moderator, and members of our panel to take the stage. Thank you.
Director, thank you so much. I appreciate that. So as our panelists come up to the stage, it's a Saturday morning, so I feel like we're having like a conversation, right? That's comfy and cozy. So if I may just ask maybe Adrian and Mayor Ginther to just kind of tilt your chairs a little bit because, communication is one of the key tenets of leadership, right? So you got to be able to see each other when you talk to each other. Before we begin with our panelists, I just want to, driving over here, I was thinking to myself, okay, leadership. How do I open this? And I remember a really good piece of advice someone once told me. They said, a good leader always shows up, no matter what. And I remember this time, I walked into my newsroom, and I was grumpy. No doubt, I was grumpy. I mean, I wake up at 1 o'clock every morning. I have to be there by 2. I don't drink coffee. Do I have a right to be grumpy? I think so. And I just had all this stuff, right? Home stuff, work stuff in my head, and I just didn't feel like going to work. But I went to work, albeit a little bit late. I showed up, and I was grumpy. And you could feel the room change. My producers could tell I was grumpy. They got kind of quiet. The energy just got sucked out, right? And so I got up and I realized this, and I went into the restroom. No joke. I looked at myself in the mirror and I kind of just slapped myself a little bit. And I said, Angela, get it together, right? You have to be on the air in 2 hours. You've got to figure out how to get out of this funk because you have a team that's counting on you. So I went back in and I walked in and I said, hey guys, I'm really sorry. I was a little grumpy, but let's get to it. And we changed just like that. We handled the breaking news. And I thought to myself, I don't know if that was showing up, but I know that that was taking accountability for myself. I checked in with myself, and I wanted them to know, I know they're grumpy too. They wake up at 10 p.m. the night before. They have to get to work at midnight, so they're far worse than me. But they showed up because they had a job to do. So for me, every day when that alarm goes off, or I should say 4 alarms, because I hit snooze a lot, I know I have to show up. And so as we hear from our panelists today, I think they'll all have amazing stories and perspectives about what leadership looks like for them, whether it's at 1 a.m., 10 p.m., or for the mayor 24 hours a day. I just saw you yesterday with Intel, so I don't know where you get your time to sleep. But nevertheless, let's begin. I know you all have your folders, and you can take notes because I know we're going to have a wealth of knowledge on this Saturday morning. I want to start with the first question, which is what really guides you as a leader? Everybody has their own place of beginning. Something must guide you to say, I want to be a good leader, and here's why. I'll start with you, Mayor.
Good morning, and thank you, Angela, for all that you do and getting up at 1 in the morning to bring us news and making sure that we're getting good information out to the public. Facts and truth have never been more important, and so when you have journalists and reporters that are committed to that, we need to celebrate them for all that they do. That's a great question. I would say what really drives me as a leader, or kind of my guiding light, is equity. I was born and raised in Columbus and spent a lot of time growing up and playing sports and being active within Columbus City schools. So I figured out early on what certain neighborhoods look like and what they had, and what other neighborhoods look like and what they had from a resource standpoint, as well as us having foster kids in our house for about 30 years. Mom and Dad counted up one time, I think there were 47 kids that came through our house, not all at the same time, over 3 decades. And so I learned up close, what disparity and inequity look like. And so I'd really say kind of equity and opportunity are what drive me as a leader. And that's why I'm so excited to be with you all to learn from you and the other panelists here this morning.
Adrian, you run DEI for Worthington Industries, a major corporation. And as you transitioned into that role about a year ago, what drives you to say, I'm going to lead into a new direction here?
So for me, when I started my career years ago, I was working for, at the time, it was still Bank One, now JP Morgan Chase. But my leader at the time, well, one of them, actually gave me a quote that he lived by. And he said, if you want to become a leader, this is what I want you to work towards. He said, a good manager will tell people what their team has done. A great manager will let their team tell people. But a leader will make them believe they did it all by themselves. So when I think about how I go into this role, and understanding that my industry is one that is predominantly and historically white male, how do we diversify that? How do we push forward? And really, it's getting my business leaders, my functional leaders to understand I will be behind you. It does not need to be my name. It does not need to start with Adrian said or Adrian told us. You did this. If you have the idea, if I come to you with a plan, we will do it together. But at the end of it, I want you to have felt empowered that we took this journey together. So every day when I walk into the office, that is my mission, to go in hoping that by the end of the day, when I walk out, people will believe that they have advanced our diversity, equity, and inclusion practices on their own. That my role becomes an afterthought. And so far it's worked. We're making progress, but that's what guides me every day.
That's great. I love that because you're talking about moving the needle, right? We have to move that needle, especially in that DEI space, and that is something Councilwoman Borosa de Padilla, you have done with City Council. So what guides you?
So first of all, I want to say I get the opportunity to work with one of the baddest directors at the City of Columbus. I want to thank Director William Scott, who I get to learn from every day, and also want to shout out Abdi and Todd again because they do an amazing thing. And then also all of you, because anytime that you get the opportunity to pour into yourself, and it changes everything. It changes everyone you touch, everything that you do, and the way you show up in the community. And I always feel, Maria said this morning she hadn't had coffee, and as soon as she walked into this room and saw people she knew, you were her coffee. You are my coffee, always. So it is always good to be here in community. You are my people, so I'm glad to be here with all of you. I think the things that drive me is, our first teachers are our parents. And so my parents, and I think a lot of folks in this room know my story, my parents were refugees from Cuba. My dad had the first Latino food store here in Columbus. And I'm not saying that this is the right business model, but stay with me. My dad let people run tabs at his store, but he knew them. He knew every single person that stopped at his store. And it was the first, not just Latino food store, Caribbean, right? If you wanted plantains, if you wanted, just go down the list, I was going to say everything in Spanish, but y'all are with me. But if you wanted anything, that's where you went, right? And so my dad knew people, and they knew their stories, and people would have long tabs, and sometimes it was only $5 they could pay towards their tab. But my dad saw their humanity and understood their story. And everybody who checked out, now they would give it a fancy name like a boutique. It was like a boutique experience. My dad was like, this is a community experience, right? Like, this was like a community center. Like, there was always a game of dominoes happening in the back. Like after the store, people would come together and they would, talk. And my dad would like pull things out of the cooler for people. And every time you checked out, it was like a 5-minute conversation. And that like proximity to people and that kindness is something I first learned from my parents and was reinforced as a young person. I did 2 years of service as an AmeriCorps member. And, at 17, I was sitting in people's living rooms in like a primarily Appalachian community, which for this like Latina girl from the East Side felt like I was in another world when I was stepping into these communities. And when I sat down and I talked to people, I realized they all wanted the same thing. We all basically want the same thing, right? We want better opportunities for our kids. We want more for ourselves. The same prosperity that brought my parents from Cuba to Columbus brought people from different parts of the country to Columbus. And I started to fundamentally understand that and understand that proximity was everything, listening to people and being kind, right? Just showing up and meeting people where they are. And I think that has gone into the DNA of who I am as a leader and how I show up in community.
It's beautiful because you're talking about empathy, right? Which is something that, I think sometimes we see leaders who start off, but as they rise through the ranks, they forget the empathy that they had for the reason why they wanted to be in that leadership role. That's beautiful. Stephanie.
I know I have to go last. I promise you, everyone, I just have a cold. I don't have COVID. I did check 2 days ago, so
We
as
need
I'm
a
up here
bumper
coughing.
sticker for that or
Yeah,
something,
isn't
right?
that really horrible that you have to just sort of set the stage when you're walking in some place now because of COVID? But I just wanted you to know that, especially Nordea, since I'm sitting next to you. It's also, I didn't realize I was going to be here with the mayor today, so, and all of these distinguished people. So, gosh, we haven't been on a stage together for a long time since school board. So this is real. I'm going to learn a lot today, too. And I just want to also say, just looking out and looking at the diversity in this crowd just really warms my heart this morning, because I don't get to see this kind of diversity most of the time unless I'm on an international, track and field or doing something with World Athletics. So just to know that I know that this diversity is in Columbus, but to see it all in one room like this is really a beautiful picture. So I hope somebody's like capturing it, so that really, so that we can see. I mean, Shelley, from this viewpoint.
I'll do it from this view. Go.
Yeah, it's just really, it just warms my heart. Anyway, let me start off by saying that, for me in a leadership role, for whom much is given, much is required. And we all woke up this morning. We are blessed. We all, we have a roof over our head. We have food on our tables. And that's what leads me, is because I have been blessed. And I've had a lot of experiences getting a full scholarship to come here to Ohio State a long, long time ago. We're not going to put years on anything because I'll be dating myself. Being able to work in this community for over 30 years in different capacities, being able to serve in this community, and now in this present role, it gives me that opportunity to give back. And that was one of the things that when I went to The Ohio State University, it was about, and Woody Hayes talked about, paying forward. And so for me, leadership is about, how do I pay forward? How do I make sure that our community, everyone in our community, has the same opportunities that I've had the privilege of having? I came from working class folks. My people worked in steel mills. They worked in car factories. We were blue collar worker folks. But they also rose to the middle class. And so all of us, we have that potential. What we have to make sure is that all of us are making sure that everybody else is able to reach their full potential. And for me, that's what leadership is about.
I love it. And I think all of us can take a little bit of all your stories and relate to it, which is what's so beautiful about this panel. Like we said, different backgrounds, but we can all relate to something that you all said, so thank you. I'm gonna just open this one up to the panel, so whoever wants to speak, feel free. But as leaders, perhaps one of the biggest challenges is managing conflict. In my house, I say this is a no drama zone, right? Drama-free zone. And I do that every day walking around my 9-year-old, drama-free zone. How do you handle conflict? You can't do that in your businesses, I'm sure.
Mayor, we should just go around with a no drama-free zone sign. Yeah, that works. I'm just kidding. I will say first, I wasn't intending, I was just going to make that joke, but I have the mic now. So I think in terms of conflict and how you handle conflict, I think, and I learned this a long time ago, people want to be seen and they want to be heard. And I think that oftentimes we don't see people and hear them. And I think that that is where the biggest conflict comes from, right? Like accepting when people are showing up in a space and they're hurt or they're upset, or maybe they don't understand a process, or maybe there was a misunderstanding, and taking a beat to really listen to people and accept what they are giving you. And that's hard. My whole life is about acceptance these days, right? Like people are, and this goes back to the empathy you talked about, right? Like understanding why people are upset, accepting that, saying, yes, I hear you, I see you, and now how do we get to the other side,
Yep.
right? How do we move past where we are right now? Because I feel like when you meet that energy, when you match someone's energy, all you're gonna do is continue to conflict, right? But when you open the space for dialogue and then try to move people from dialogue to resolution, that's where, for me, that is the tactic that I've used to work through conflict. You know, whether that is, I still have another full-time job I work for a nonprofit, same nonprofit I've worked for. So whether that's at City or whether it's working with constituents, I think fundamentally we're all human beings and we need the same thing. And that's usually why people are coming. They want to unload whatever they're feeling, and they want someone to fix it for them. I can't always fix it for you, but I can hear you, and then we can work together towards that resolution.
So listen and take action, right? I mean, walk with them through that resolution. Don't just say, here you go, here's who you can call for more help. That's great. Anyone else want to chime in on that?
So growing up in a multiracial household, we had rules for conflict. So I grew up being very introverted, but at the same time appreciating that conflict is a real thing and is necessary. So one, it's about accepting conflict is a real thing. You're going to have it. You cannot embrace diversity and therefore inclusion without embracing conflict. But what are your rules of engagement? So, you know, to tie into to what Lord has shared, when you think about conflict, have you set parameters? Okay, we can disagree, but we'll do it in a respectful manner. You are entitled to your opinion as I am entitled to mine, but what outcome are you seeking for this conflict? Is it that you want someone just to listen while you vent? Is it that you are trying to work through a process and you want someone to help you achieve an outcome? Or is it that you want them to take the lead in helping fix what caused the conflict? If there are no rules of engagement, you will get nowhere, and that's where you start matching energy and butting heads with people, and the conflict doesn't become resolved. There have to be rules of engagement. We can disagree at any point, but what is the outcome that we are hoping for at the end of this disagreement? Because if we don't understand that, then this isn't a conflict. This is just the difference of opinion in which we want to fight. So we have to accept that. So there have to be rules of engagement for how you and other individuals will go through a conflict, and understanding that you need to agree on those rules of engagement before you can get into those steps of resolve.
How do you motivate them through that conflict? Go ahead, Mayor.
No, I was just going to add that our job as leaders, for those of you in this room, there's a difference between being a leader and those that actually thrive in conflict and weaponize differences for their own personal or political or narrow interests. And I think particularly in the world that we're in now, both in this community and in this country and in this world, as leaders, your job, our job, is to make sure we clearly define the boundaries, as we've talked about here, rules of engagement, but to call out those that seek to divide and undermine and attack and slander and use our differences as weapons for their own personal gain. Our job as leaders is to embrace our diversity, celebrate our diversity, make us more competitive, more inclusive, having that growth mindset, because there's plenty of scarcity mindset all around us, and our job as leaders is to embrace that growth mindset. And so rules of engagement are important, your tone, how you speak to people, how you convene. But I'll also tell you that leadership is lonely, and I've learned this a little bit in the last couple of years. At the end of the day, you're going to have to make some decisions. And there's a difference between listening to folks, hearing them out, seeing them, and necessarily doing what they want you to do. And I think as leaders, you also need to understand that at the end of the day, after you've heard all the voices, heard as much information as possible, you're going to have to make a decision. And you're going to have to live with that. And there may not be anybody to reassure you and tell you you were right. You don't get a whole lot of credit for prevention, I've learned in the last couple of years.
You know, Mayor, that kind of segues into the next question I had, was how do you get people from different organizations, different interests to come together for that shared goal? And I think the elephant in the room is we all know what your shared goal has been for the last 2 years, right? I mean, public safety has been at the top. And so when you talk about making those decisions, leadership is courage, right? Leadership is saying, all right, I'm going to put on the general's hat and be in the line of fire, but I know this is right. Like what, and if we can get personal, like when you went to sleep at night, what did you say to yourself to say, I made the right call?
Just wasn't one night. I would say that faith, family, and this community is what got me through the last few years. And this community is a pretty amazing place. Mm-hmm. And I don't need to tell the folks in this room that. The people of this community, the courage of this community, to have a different type of conversation and movement forward than you're seeing a lot of other places around the country, and I would argue the world. I love this this city and this community, and it lifted me up and at times restored me, challenged me like never before. But the things that are worth most in our life are the ones that we had to work the hardest for, that we endured the greatest stretching. You know, there's this saying that God never gives you anything that you can't handle. I just wish he had a little less confidence in me. There have been a few times I've felt that way in the last couple of years. But yeah, faith, family, and this community. But you also have to be willing to look in the mirror and know that as humans, we all have our blind spots. Sure. And we all have, we can always learn more when you have more voices, more diverse voices, voices that have been left out of the conversation in the past. When they're part of that conversation, you make better decisions, more informed, thoughtful, impactful decisions when more voices are part of that conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for letting us go a little deep early on a Saturday morning, but I do appreciate that. I'd love to hear from our other panelists. How do you bring people together, organizations, or your team together around a shared goal when you might have some people who don't quite feel the same way?
You know, I will say this, and thank you for letting me dodge the bullet on the conflict question.
Oh, I can circle back.
Because I like conflict, so I'm good. The mayor will tell you that. I'm okay with it. But, you know, but going back to this question, you know, as a leader, one of the things that I learned early on is that you have to accept people for where they're at. And everybody doesn't have the same drive that you have. People may not have the same, want to go on the same path that you're on. And so, but you have to accept people for where they are. And what you do is you figure out where their strengths are, where they may have their challenges, and then you utilize those strengths. And it's like a puzzle piece, right? So I got this person over here, strong right here, and you're putting this whole piece of puzzle together to get to that shared goal, right? Mm. This person's going to add this piece, this person's going to add that piece, this person's going to add that piece, and the puzzle is going to get done, right? But everybody can't be the same, and you have to be able to know what those people's strengths are and be able to utilize them for the direction and the purpose that you want to go to. So that was a really hard lesson to learn because I used to be so frustrated with people, right? Why ain't they, you know, you turn around and ain't nobody got your back, right? Nobody's standing behind you, but you have to just accept those folks for who they are. And they're still leaders, but they just have a different strength than you do, right? And you got to be able to accept that and be okay with it. And I promise you'll get a lot further if you just accept people. It goes back to what you said, Lourdes, I see you, but I got to know what I'm seeing, right? Mm. And you have to take time to know what people's strengths are.
I'd be a horrible journalist if I didn't circle back on the conflict since you opened the door. So how do you manage conflict?
So probably 10 years ago, I'd be like, boom, I'm gonna go straight on in, right? But I think it goes back to what, Lord, you gotta see people.
Yeah.
So for me, it's not about running away from the conflict. And I think as leaders, that's what you have. You can't run away from the conflict, but you have to figure out, again, what are those strengths? What is that person really saying? Do I hear you? And sometimes you have to just sit back and listen, and then learn from where that conflict is coming from. And once you learn where that's coming from, you got to dissect it a little bit. But a lot of folks don't want to take time. You want to run from conflict. No, let me go in, let me dissect it, let me take a look at where this is really coming from, and letting someone know, as you said, I see you, I hear you, I don't disagree. I mean, I disagree with you, but I'm going to respect where your position is. And when people know that you're being respectful, even in conflict, it makes a whole difference for you and them in that relationship. But respect is really important when you're looking at conflict.
Thank you.
And I want to add something onto what President Hightower was saying. I don't think conflict is not always bad, right? Like, I think that we've made it bad. I mean, conflict is good because, I mean, it's like pressure on a coal. That's what turns it into diamonds, right? That conflict, that pressure, that not agreeing can make a better product, can get a better outcome. And I think to the question of when you bring people together, I want people who don't agree with me, right? Because they make things better. Like, if you just surround yourself with people who just agree with you, or we're all coming at something from the same point to the point you were making, President Hightower, I mean, we're all just going to aggressively agree with each other, and we're not going to get the best possible resolution, right? So I think you have to bring people into things that sometimes are skeptical about your ideas, right? Or people who have sometimes some distrust, right? Because of whatever, that something is going to work. Because I think that first of all gives them insight into the process. Because sometimes I find that people don't always know what a process looks like or how to engage in it. I think that sometimes they don't realize everything that goes into the decisions that you have to make, or don't have that insight. And so by giving them a seat at the table, you're actually helping to elevate the conversation, and you're helping to get a better product at the end, right? And so I don't always think that conflict is bad. I think conflict can be good. I think it just makes people feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. I'm curious, in the corporate world, Adrian, how you bring people together with that shared goal of moving the needle with DE&I. We have seen a lot of DE&I progress, I think we can say, around the country. We've seen a lot of corporations establish new DEI positions. On the flip side, we've also heard people then say, oh, they're just checking a box, right? So you have some people who don't believe in the mission because they think companies are checking the box. And then you have people who are saying, no, 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 we're here and this is what we want to do. How do you bring that together?
So those are those are perspectives we deal with every day. I think President Hightower said it best. You have to meet people where they are. When we have this conversation in the office, we liken it to a journey. So I live near Blendon Woods, walk the trails, the paths all the time. Some people are so far on the trail you can't even see them. They're out in front. I think about where I used to work prior to Worthington Industries was Cardinal Health. So I had 3.5 years at the feet of Deveray Kirkland, Ola Snow, Mike Kaufman, cutting my teeth doing this work and dealing with some of this conflict. And they're way out. You can't see them if you're just starting out on the trail. Other people are sitting in the parking lot saying, I'm not even sure if I want to get out the car and make this journey. Got to accept that too. So when we talk about meeting people where they are, it's understanding that on their DEI journey, they may be in a different space. Now, how they got to that space is the same way we move through life. Their shared experience, their trauma, their emotional state, their physical state, what they've seen their family experience. My mother came to this country to go to college and was supposed to go back home till she met some random guy and had 2 kids and ended up staying. I was there when my mother became a naturalized citizen. So those experiences play a role. So when we talk about seeing the larger picture, I don't need you to see everything that I see. My job is to see the mural on the wall. My job is to lay it out and say, by the time this is done, this will be a masterpiece that will hang up on the wall. Your job is to focus on this small 8 by 12 square. And if you can do more, focus on this 24 by 36. But in your world, in your manufacturing facility, if you've got 89% diversity at your entry-level staff, with your maintenance technicians, with your machine operators, et cetera, what are we doing to move those people to the next level? Have you developed them? Is there equity in your development process? Do you advocate for them the same way you would advocate for someone who looks like you? Or do we make decisions based off of, well, we've always done it that way, and this person's been here 20 years, let's just move them into that spot? They may not be a good leader. They may be great at what they do. They may be the absolute best. That does not make you a qualified leader. So let's step back and say, what strengths are we missing from our team? That's how we leverage our recruiting practices. That's why we're changing what schools we go down to and interact with from an intern standpoint. We're putting parameters in place to say, if you've staffed your department with interns for the last 2-3 years and you haven't hired a one of them, guess what? You're not getting interns this coming summer. It's not happening. Because typically, that is where your diversity comes from. So what you are doing is building a pipeline and then literally drilling a hole into it and saying, I don't care if it leaks. I got a pipeline. And that's the check the box exercise. So are you damaging the pipeline for the sake of what is convenient and what is easy? So instead of asking people to focus on what I've been asked to focus on, and Stephanie, you know my CHRO, you know my boss, you know she's going to say, paint this whole picture and get it done. I just ask people to focus on the square that they can manage. Just focus on that one thing. If it's moving from a place of passive learning, social media is passive learning. If you get all of your information from social media, you haven't learned anything. You've just become passively aware of a situation. 240 characters is not enough for you to learn anything. 10 pictures swiping left to right is not enough for you to learn anything. A 3-minute TikTok is not enough for you to learn anything. I'm young. I'm going to tell you that to your face. That is passive awareness. You have to move into self-educating. When you become aware, you become responsible for what you do with that information. So empowering leaders means telling them, this is the path we will go. I will give you the autonomy and freedom to get yourself to that next waypoint, that next checkpoint. However, you cannot sit and say, I'm going to stand still in this space and hope that everybody else figures it out and hide. Nope, you can take baby steps. You can take big leaps. But you are responsible for making the next step on that journey when you become aware of what part of the puzzle, what part of the painting you are responsible for. And then once you accomplish that, we can give you a little bit more and a little bit more until you can see a more fuller picture of how this moves our company, our industry, our city along.
And I also think that talks about culture, right? You have you're building a culture, and so I want to just find out, like, how do you motivate a team? What carrot do you dangle? And a running joke at 10 TV is they created years ago this thing called the Culture Club, and we're like, what's the Culture Club? Is Boy George going to hop out from somewhere, right? Who remembers Boy George? Thank you. I think I just dated all of us. Anyways, and the Culture Club was, someone who went above and beyond. You got a gas gift card, or, we hit our ratings mark, so we had a huge barbecue. And it lifted spirits, but it didn't change the culture. So how do you motivate as leaders? What do you use to motivate? Do you give out, like, oh, you get an extra day off because you worked 20 hours extra this week? Just curious.
Well, I mean, those kind of carrots are important, right? My team, we're part of the human services industry. We've been going as first responders, economic responders, since COVID started. So yes, we put in place culture care days, right? You can take them just beyond your PTO because we need to make sure, again, this is about I see you. And you got to be able to see your employees and know what they want. You have to do surveys, and sometimes it's a hard pill to swallow when you hear what maybe some of your employees are saying. Now, believe some of the stuff that they're saying, but that's a whole nother issue, right? No, you get your feelings hurt, right? Because you think that you got this great culture going on, but then you really don't. And so we have to do things like that to make sure that our employees have an opportunity for us to hear, so we can hear from them. We do, go to lunch, pay for everybody's lunch once, like once a quarter. Come have lunch with the president and CEO. People need to know that, you're touching, you're feeling. This is as leaders, this generation now is so much different. Most of you are here, millennials, all you little young people out here. Y'all want to touch and feel, you want to, can we go to lunch? Can we do this with you? And what I have to say is it's a really fine line. I don't know if you all find that too. It's a real fine line. I have a lot of young people that work with me. They don't work for me. They work with me. We went on to a conference and in Vegas, and they were like, "Where are we going out?" And I'm like, "I'm not going out with y'all." And I'm like, I don't do that anymore, right? I'm not hanging with, and I don't want to see. I don't want to know whatever you do. Just make sure you can be on that plane the next morning, right? But I think we have to know where your boundaries are. But the interaction, I think, today as leaders is really important, and how you figure out what that interaction is and what those boundaries are. As leaders, you have to figure it out. You gotta know what those lived experiences are with your people, especially when you have a diverse group of folks that work with you. You have to know backgrounds. Yesterday, in our all-staff meeting, we had Denzel Portes come in and talk about Stonewall and LGBTQ. AI plus, did I get it right today? I can't keep, did I get it right today? Whew, I've been practicing a lot. But we had to come in and talk about, what inclusion actually means, and talk about the use of pronouns, because, we just don't know who in our, as our team members need to have that affirmation that we have an inclusive workplace for them to come in. So you have to be able to embrace the differences and the diversity across the board, and do it in a way so that people know I see you and that we care about you.
Any other carrots?
I'll talk from the city year end. So I'm a senior vice president at city year, and I think to incentivize culture means that we need to change the culture, right? Like, it's not like incentivizing our people to change it. It's like, as an organization, we have to make a stand to change the culture, because that's how culture really happens. It's a systems change. It's not just a people change, right? And so we declared ourselves an anti-racist organization, and that's hard and heavy. And what does that even mean, right? But that for us means that we're creating space for people, right? So on our core members, our AmeriCorps members have their pronouns on their name tags. We gave people additional days off, that if you wanted to go out and you wanted to protest, that's a day off that you get to do, right? If you want to show up, because the majority of our workforce are 17 to 25-year-olds, and a lot of the folks who then come on our staff are potentially of that age group, right? Because we have a lot of people coming out of the Corps. And so for us to say, we want you to change, that means we needed to change. It's not just like, we want you to show up and, you get a gift card for acting differently, or saying that you're going to go to a D&I training and check the box. But like, how are we as an organization creating space for people to change? It's interesting, because I speak in analogies a lot. I think if people who are bilingual would appreciate this. The reason that kids back in the day, like probably our age group, we got braces after all your grown teeth came in, right? And many times you had to wear a retainer for life, or you had to get braces again. Now they put braces on kids. Have you guys seen this? Like, second graders have braces. And the reason that they do that is that they're creating space for your teeth to grow in. So they're actually holding space so your teeth do the things that they're supposed to do, right? That they grow in the space that you want to. And so I share that because I think that's what we need to start to do as leaders, right? How are we creating the space for people to grow into where we want them to go, instead of trying to push things that are already in place and have roots someplace else? Because that's actually people work that people need to do individually, and we need to, again, create the space for people to do that. So I think it's flipping the question for me about not how do we incentivize, but how do we show up and create change, so that people can then believe that that's the incentive. The incentive is, oh, you're doing this as an organization, then we can start to do this too. Because I think it's unfair to do it
Yep.
the opposite way.
And they want to be part of it, so.
Right,
yeah.
exactly.
So I know we started a little bit later than we expected, but the directors allowed us to kind of wrap up with 2 more questions, if you don't mind. So we might go a little bit over. But 2 last questions. I'll let you think about this, and Mayor, I will start with you. If you all can share with us a moment where you feel like you failed as a leader and how you turned that around for yourself and your team. And then if you could finish off with the best leadership advice you did ever receive. So we'll do a little Jeopardy music. Doo, doo. Let them think about it.
Just one time that you failed as a leader? This week, this morning? I want to go back. I will answer that question because I'm trying to choose like the top 5 or 10 and get down to 1. And that's just in the last 12 months. I want to go back to this idea of carrots.
Okay.
I'm trying to be too heavy this morning, right? But if you want to be a leader, it ain't just about carrots. You got to know how to use carrots and sticks, right? So at the end of the day, if you've offered carrot and done your part to create culture and encourage and train and either people move or offering the space, and at the end of the day, your leader is saying all the right things and doing some of the things, but doesn't actually believe in your culture, you have to help that leader move on. Because when people within organizations see folks that aren't really committed to the culture and maybe say all the right things in rooms like this, but then leave this room and say something else or undermine or eat away or, are poisonous to the culture. Your job as leaders is to protect that culture, even if it means changing the leaders of your organization. So I'd love to say you can get everything done as leaders with carrots, but there's a reason you have sticks too, and people will hold you as accountable for not using those sticks as the leader, the CEO, the elected official, the whatever your role is. So I would say that one of my greatest failures as a leader was thinking that we had a leadership problem at the Columbus Division of Police instead of a cultural one. And all good people trying to do the right things. And so I made a decision to appoint at the time someone who had served as our interim police chief, Tom Quinlan, good man, good person. I didn't have a leadership issue. I had a cultural issue. And learned that through a variety of different experiences, how we initially handled the protests, how certain things were handled when Casey Goodson was shot and killed as opposed to bringing in BCI immediately. It was a difficult time. My niece died in a tragic car accident that Wednesday. Casey Goodson was shot and killed by Franklin County Deputy Meade on Friday. And even though our office told the chief at the time, because I obviously was wrapped up with my niece's death, that BCI should come in immediately, he automatically, because it wasn't Columbus Police, it was Franklin County Police, initially started investigating that, and then BCI wouldn't come in and so forth and so on. There were just a number of instances where culture was eating our leader. And so I had to come to terms with that and make a change. After I had appointed this individual who was exceptionally qualified, very experienced, very committed to a lot of the work we were doing, but wasn't able to lead and change the culture. And so I made the decision to hire Chief Bryant. And I think we as a community, I know I'm a better mayor today because of her. I think we're starting to address some of the cultural issues within the Division of Police. We need to give her time, continue to give her support, and space, and carrots and sticks to change that culture. But I'd say that's one of my biggest failures, but I guess it's only a failure if you don't learn from it. What's the difference between a mistake and a failure? And but also, this is what I'm trying to be here is very open and honest and vulnerable. And I think that's our job as leaders too. Yeah. You have so much more power and are more influential if you're viewed as authentic and real, warts and all.
I like to applaud the mayor for being so honest and transparent. Because I'll be honest, the media was not easy to deal with either through that time. But thank you very much for that. Who would like to share next?
You know, I think it's important, and I just want to build on that, and I meant to say this earlier. You never know how people are showing up when they come to you in the mornings. When you walk into a door, you never know. And so I think that's where all of us, when we talk about that respect, you don't know what happened at my house last night. You don't know what happened with my family members. You don't know what happened in my neighborhood. And so when people are making decisions as leaders, I hope that what the mayor just shared to you is you don't know what's going on privately with people, right? And it's not, he doesn't need to jump up and down and tell everybody, oh, I had a niece that was killed, right? But as he's making all these other big decisions, there's also, life is still happening, right? Life, and that goes for all of us. We never know. And so I have a similar situation, you know, and this is about culture. You hire people, and I had a situation where I had someone who was like the best employee ever, but that person was beginning to change that culture to a negative. And so how do you, even though this person is producing, they are knocking it out the park, right? But at the same time, they're killing me and killing my culture. And so my mistake was, Angela, I let it go on too long, right? Because this person is producing. And I'm like, oh gosh, you know, everybody else, you know, I chop their head off when they do something. This person, I'm just like, can you maybe do it a little bit differently, right? Because you don't want that person to leave. You know that person is just doing everything you need and is high performing. And so for me, that was a lesson learned that even though someone may be high performing, if they're killing my culture, right, they got to go. And I have to just be okay with, all right, I'm going to have this gap for a minute, and I got to find somebody else to come back in. But you cannot allow someone to come in and kill your culture, even though they are a high-performing individual.
That's great insight, right? Because you have to go to the company, right, which could be your bottom line, the revenue, and all that stuff. But culture affects all of that in so many ways. Councilwoman?
I was thinking hard about this one. Not because I haven't failed, but the way that we define failure. I would say they say that the biggest stresses in like a marriage are moving, getting a new job, having a baby. Those are the top three. So I was offered.
I got like 5 more to that, but that's okay. Okay, go on.
Oh, hold on to your hat.
Okay.
So I was 29 and newly married, and we were living in Boston. And they were like, do you want to come home and be the executive director of City of Columbus? So my very first board meeting was on my 30th birthday. I was newly married. I moved from Boston to back to Columbus, back to my hometown, and shortly after I was pregnant. During my tenure as an executive director, again, 30 years old, I had 2 children. How I thought I could be both a new wife, a new leader, and a new mother all at the same time in a site that, you know, we were a site, and President Hightower, you know this, in the life cycle of an organization, right? We were like a smelly middle schooler, Citier was at the time, right? Like, we couldn't figure ourselves out. Like, we had some instability in leadership. I literally sat down with my board, who was very white, and most of them could be my parent. And I was very not white and very young. And I don't know that I was totally ready, but I let people convince me that I was. And I also convinced myself that I could do all of these things all at the same time. And I will tell you that I did none of them well. I was not a good partner. I was not the best. My first day back from maternity leave, I literally sat down with one of my directors, and she was like, "You have a little something in your hair." Literally a glob of throw up in my hair right here. That's proximate to my nose, and I couldn't even smell it, right? But like, that's how cooked I was, right? Like, it was just too much. And so I think that from a very personal side, you have to decide. I think especially like being a woman of color, being first generation American, I'm not traditional. I didn't graduate from college. I went lots of times. I didn't finish it though. And so, I felt like these opportunities would not come again. So I had to take them, right? And I had to like show up, and I had to be the very, very best at it, and I had to be perfect. And I think that those are the things that we tell ourselves. And I say this looking around this room, where we have lots of people who are brown and black, lots of people who were probably not born here, lots of people who share the same sort of ideas, that when you are given opportunities, and I had parents who were like, "You should thank all the people for everything all the time. Like, thank them. It wasn't that I earned it. Like, aren't these people so nice for giving this job to you?" Right? And I'm like, "But I earned this," right? And they're like, "You should show up. You have to do a good job. If you don't, they could take it away." That scarcity mindset that we have as immigrants, I think, is deep in my DNA. And so I think it took a while for me to then understand, like, how am I showing up best for me first and foremost? Because if I'm not doing justice to myself, I will do justice to no one else. And then, how am I showing up right? What's my next level? That's my family and my kids. And how am I showing up right for them? And then it's how I'm showing up professionally, right? And I had that all wrong. And so it affected every decision that I made, to your point. It affected how I showed up. It affected how I felt about myself. And so I had to pause. And it took 6 years, by the way, to get to that place of like, other opportunities will come, and if they don't, where's my value?
But you got there. So,
But I got
right? You got there. Awesome. Adrian, I'll close with you.
So when I made that statement earlier about someone being the best performer, but it doesn't make them a good leader, which I'm glad you came back to, I was talking about myself. So I remember at a time when I decided that I wanted to do this work, because I didn't always. I have the privilege, and when I say privilege, I mean responsibility, of being a second-generation DEI professional. My father retired doing this work. And I swore he was crazy. I never wanted to do what he did, and God, the universe, fate, whatever you believe in has a way of telling you, ha ha ha. And that's how I ended up here. But I remember I had come to this conclusion that this is what I want to do. And all I needed was an opportunity. I thought I knew everything there was to know. I've seen people done it. I've watched at the kitchen table. I know it all. I just need somebody to give me a shot. Nobody will give me a shot. I'm a leader. People trust me. People come talk to me. They tell me what's going on. Just somebody give me a shot. And I remember someone that I trust and is still, I would say she's my mentor. She would tell you that we are partners and friends. Snatched me down as if she was my mother and said, "What is wrong with you?" And we immediately had a series of conversations, and she said, have you lost your mind? And she's a mother too, and she said, "Did your mother ever tell you, did you ever walk around saying, I'm a man, I'm a man?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "What'd your mother tell you?" And it was in Spanish, but basically it was essentially, if you got to tell somebody you a man, then you're not. And she said, "Did you forget that?" And I'm looking confused because I'm still high on me. And she says, "If you have to walk around telling everybody that you're a leader, then you're not a leader. You are the exact opposite. I was that person, to President Hightower's point. I was a top performer. Couldn't touch the numbers. But I was kind of toxic. I thought a whole lot of myself in that situation, and it limited my ability to be taken seriously as a leader. And it took years to rebuild my credibility. And what I learned in that is that it's not a leader's job to stand out front all the time. Yes, there are moments where that's necessary, but your job as a leader is to advocate, not to take credit for. And I hadn't learned that lesson yet. I was so worried about me and my perception and how I was viewed that I failed to advocate for the people who had put their trust in me and respected me and given me the opportunity to be a spokesperson for them. And that was a really hard lesson to learn, because you can have all the passion in the world, but if you do not learn, if you do not have people who will help you aim that passion in the right way, then you will never be a leader to the best of your abilities. And I had to learn that very hard lesson. So like you, I consider it more of a mistake than a failure, because I had the opportunity given to me to learn from it. But man, I will never forget that to this day. That I literally could have been the exact opposite of what gives me the opportunity to even talk about my experience in front of you all today. If I hadn't taken the time to have somebody tell me what it really means to be a leader.
That's great. And what they say, every failure leads to success. So thank you all for sharing. There's a saying out there, right? Fall 9 times, get up 10. So there you have it. We're going to close by just my personal reflection of what I heard here. Everything that these leaders on the stage talked about all leads to building trust. If you think about it, they're building a trust with their team. They're building a trust with themselves, trusting their decision-making and trusting that they know what's right and the path to take, no matter what fires they have to jump through. And I think that all of us know that when you build trust with somebody, you'll go to the ends of the earth with them. You'll walk through fire with them. I'll go to an ice cream store, even if I'm on a diet, if you tell me to, right? I mean, that's what trust is. And so leadership is everything you heard today, but you build that trust through the empathy, through the decisions, and through saying, I get it, I see you, I hear you. So how about a round of applause for our amazing panelists this morning? Thank you so much. I'm going to close and let Abdi come up here to kind of tell us what's next and maybe give everyone a little bit of a break. So Abdi, stage is yours.
Would you please give our moderator another round of applause? Angela Ann, thank you so much. That was amazing. The moment that we were looking forward to. If you open up your packet and see the bio of the keynote speaker that we've invited, and I'm not going to read the whole thing. You can do it by yourself. But Michael Corey is a good friend of Nala. We consider him as a member of faculty because the few times when he helped some of the programming that we have done in the past, he never said no. He moderated panel discussions. The reason why we call him back to deliver our keynote remarks today is who he is. He is a great leader in our community. As you can see his bio, he leads the Human Services Chamber with more than 150 members who work on a very valuable and beneficial causes to the community, from health and human services, housing and refugee and immigrant services, and more. He's the most humble guy that I know, aggressively humble, if I may add. that he probably don't want to read his bio or say a whole lot of things about him. He championed for causes that we all care in our community, especially community causes for the members of Human Services Chamber that service variety of our community in Columbus region. With further ado, ladies and gentlemen, help me, Michael Corey.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can we please give Abdi a round of applause for everything he's done to pull this together with his team? Abdi's very kind in calling me humble or aggressively humble. My mother-in-law insists that I have many reasons to be humble. I'm really, really honored to be here with you today. I want to tell you briefly about our organization a little bit more, and then I want to dive into the remarks that I've tried to prepare to be worthy of each of you. The Human Service Chamber is probably not an organization you've heard of before, and that's okay. We like it that way. We like being behind the scenes. Our job is to help the organizations that are on the front lines across the realm of health and human services. No matter what the community need is, our job is to help those organizations do that work. And I'm sure you know many of the organizations. They run from really big ones like the YMCA and YWCA. I know you heard from one of my bosses earlier today, Stephanie Hightower from the Columbus Urban League, to smaller organizations that might have a staff of one person. And our job is to try to be helpful to each and all of them as much as we possibly can, and to be on call whenever they ask us to be available. So our job is to work with elected officials to help get them the resources that they need, help them get the PPE and everything else they could possibly need so that they can help the community. And I suspect that many of you as leaders in our community know a lot of them and maybe work at some of those organizations and have a relationship with them. And I want to tell you before I dive in, anything I or we can do to be of support to you and your leadership journey here, please don't hesitate to reach out. And I promise to get back to you and find ways to be of support, however I and all of us can be. Okay, so as Abdi said, my name is Michael Corey, and I'm here not only on behalf of the organizations that I get to serve and their 17,000 employees, I'm here on behalf of my Lebanese American family. And on behalf of the 2 million people that call this region home. I get to think of the work that we do in support of my ancestors and in support of all of the people that call this community home now. And I want to hopefully share with you today some words of gratitude and some words of hope that I have despite the tumultuous times that we're in because of leaders like you. I don't know what your paths to this moment have been. I don't know what challenges you've overcome or what sacrifices that you've made or what you've been through to get to this moment at this Leadership Academy in 2022. But whatever your individual and collective story may be, I'm so very grateful and so very excited that home for you is not only the country from which you came, but home is also here in Columbus and in Ohio in the United States. I'm grateful for your belief in this country. May we be united this afternoon in believing that together, all of us, can make this a country worthy of each of you and of the generations of your families that preceded you and that will come. My paternal grandfather was born in Jib Jenin, Lebanon, and he believed in America too. So he came to this country with his brothers over a century ago. Who did they know and how were they able to come? Well, they knew other Lebanese men from their hometown of Jib Jenin that had already made the journey and had found work in West Virginia, one state over in Ohio. Those friends, that community, made their journey to America possible. So the brothers came and they worked together and with their friends in operating a dry goods store in a tiny town called Hinton, West Virginia. I'm not even sure Hinton, West Virginia still exists. They later operated an ice cream factory in Boomer, West Virginia. And once they had cobbled together enough money, they opened up Corey's grocery store in the capital city of Charleston. This is how my family's journey began in America. People like them and people like you are what make this country what it is and what it could be. After working in the U.S. for 20 years, my grandfather traveled back to Lebanon and met his wife. 4 days later, they got on a boat and came back and came through Ellis Island. That was in 1938. Began their family, raising 4 children, including, of course, my father. My mother's family also came over from Lebanon in the 1920s and 30s. They settled in Toledo, Ohio, 2 hours northwest of here. When my parents were children, there we go, they met at a get-together for Lebanese immigrants. My parents would see one another annually for the next 10 years or so. They eventually began to date and eventually fell in love and eventually got married and moved to Columbus. They eventually became parents to me, their only child. They're stuck with me. We were very lucky as our family rose in this country of ours. And I wonder what your family's story is in America. I hope it's one you tell and tell often, especially as leaders. We need to share our stories. They bind us together, and they will bind us together for generations to come. Of course, we do find ourselves in a turbulent period, one of uncertainty not only here, across Ohio, across the United States, but certainly across the world. And for the last 5.5 years, as I discussed, I've had the great opportunity to lead the Human Service Chamber, an organization serving almost 160 nonprofits that do all sorts of work that I think is really wonderful, good work. And many of those organizations work with immigrants and refugees, people that are new to our shores, people that speak different languages, eat different foods, sing different songs, and have different stories to tell. That's what makes America America. Because this country is a tapestry of languages, of foods, of songs, of stories, of people. The threads of that tapestry are each of you. You come from different places and will move in different directions. And centuries from today, your descendants will follow their thread back to your time here in Columbus, whether you stay or whether you go elsewhere, your time here together. The richness of this country is not based on how much we're the same, though, but on how different and wonderful we all are. And being bound together despite those differences does not mean we give up our roots. It means we get to share our roots, roots that we have to honor and celebrate, even as we weave new stories and tapestries together. America is not just its people, though. It's an idea. It's an idea of hope, of prosperity, of opportunity. It does not belong to one political party or one ideology. It belongs to all of us. It belongs to you. As President Barack Obama has said, America is also a belief. It is a belief that America is not yet finished. It is a belief that we are strong enough to be critical of ourselves so that we can change and be better. And we certainly need to change, and we certainly need to be better. It is not the America that some of our founders dreamed up over 200 years ago. Not yet. But we can change that, and we can do that together. My family's story changed, well, almost 20 years ago when my father passed away after a long fight with cancer. In the final days of his life, there were little mercies that made those difficult moments more meaningful. Among those mercies was the opportunity for my father's mother to be near, to say what she would only be able to whisper above in the years to follow. At my father's funeral a few days later, we helped my grandmother into a chair with a view of the whole room, so that the loved ones my father had accumulated over 57 years of life could pay their final respects. My grandmother welcomed them all, people that were black, white, brown, and every shade in between. When everyone left, my grandmother pulled me aside and said, "It looked like the world came through the door." The door to America for my grandmother, as with my other grandparents, and as with so many millions more, was Ellis Island. But not all came to this country in such a way. Millions were forced over, and millions have come in other ways. And indeed, millions were here long before the world came to America. We have not all been welcomed with open arms. We have not all been treated or treated others like the countrymen and women we all are. But we're all here now from all walks of life, all creeds. The world has come to America, and the remnants of those who have forgotten what America was supposed to be, even when it was a new idea on a piece of paper in 1776, those remnants, resurgent now, cannot prevail. They have forgotten, and we will remind them by making America the nation we know it can be. America is good. It can be good, and that will be the case because of you. I want to close with words from one of my favorite poets, an African-American man named Langston Hughes. Words he wrote many decades ago that are as relevant now as they were then. Oh, let America be America again, the land that never has been yet, and yet must be. The land where every man and woman is free, the people who made America, whose sweat and blood, whose faith and pain, whose hand at the foundry, whose plow in the rain, must bring back our mighty dream again. Thank you all so much. Thank you for all you're doing as leaders in our community. It's an honor to speak with you today, and have a wonderful rest of your conference together.
Wasn't that really moving? Would you please give him another round of applause, please? Thank you, Michael Corey. Thank you all you do for our community in Central Ohio. Thank you for your continuous support for NALA, and thank you for those words of wisdom. We really do greatly appreciate it. Following the keynote, we invited a member of alumni of NALA, graduated in 2019, the spring cohort, to share with you her experiences. Had a mention among many others who have participated in the program, who are doing a great job in our community. Civic, government, nonprofit, community causes. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Kauthar Musa.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Michael said, everyone has a different story. So today I'm here to share with you my story. My name is Kauthar Musa. Some of you know me, and I know some of you. I feel so blessed to be part of NALA alumni because it gave the opportunity to meet too many of diverse leaders from our Columbus community. I was born and raised in Somalia. I grew up at a city called Erigabo in the far northeast of Somalia. That's where I was born. I think it wasn't like that before. That's maybe, this picture is very new. I grew up at the time when Somalia's civil war just started and everyone was fleeing for their life. Like everyone else, my family lost everything. No job, no income, and no running water. I was secondly the youngest of 6 children, and we survived in a small makeshift that my mother used to sell grocery items in one of the rooms in our house to other displaced neighbors. One night, while we were all sleeping, an armed man broke in to wake us up with gunpoint and took everything we had. They threatened it if they say anything, they will kill everyone. This was in the middle of Ramadan in 1996. Next day, as usual, my mother was fasting and told us everything will be fine. Some of our neighbors heard the incident and brought us some food stuff for the day. I didn't know how we survived it, but my mother was a very strong woman. She immediately borrowed money from relatives and she reopened her small store inside in our house. Schools with no chairs. I completed elementary through middle school in Somalia. But our city didn't have a quality public school at that time. So my family sent me a nearby Somali region of Ethiopia where I spent few years and I graduated high school. I graduated among the top of my class. This came with us a university scholarship in the neighboring country of Sudan, where I received both bachelor's and master's degree in health science in food and nutrition. That's my pictures when I was. That's my bachelor degree, that photo, and this. Who can identify me? I think that the one with the white scarf and blue, right? After I graduated, I went back home and started working with local nonprofit organizations called Hill International as a nutrition program coordinator to help and improve the lives of local people. I helped to co-found and creation of Somali National Institute of Health, and I assisted the Minister of Health. But the security threats make our life difficult to do our job. As you see, that's me working with the Somali government under security threat. I couldn't go anywhere without an armed security guards because of terrorists targeting us. I received a number of threats, and some of my co-workers were killed. One day, a cousin of mine was on his way to pick me up when his car exploded 1 block far away from where I was, and he was killed. I was working under this predicament when I get a mentorship training visa from work with CDC, based in Atlanta in 2015. For 2 years to develop 2 years strategy plan for the Somali National Institute, which I was established. Before I returned back to Somalia, the Somali government was out of the office. And then I decided to continue and stay in America and seek resettlement after I concluded my training. I didn't know whether the US government will deny or accept my case. When I came to Columbus to stay with some relatives in Columbus, I was literally undocumented for 4 months. While I was waiting for response, can't work, I can't drive, can't do anything. But family and friends helped, relying transportation on other felt burden. But that has changed relatively quickly with good news when I received my papers. I started working with the Somali community-based organizations as Somali Can, Somali Community Association. I received my community health worker license. I applied NALA 2 times. I was rejected once. Finally, I was accepted. And then I joined the Northeast Area Commission. I now work for Heart of Ohio Family Health Center as a HIV program coordinator, and also I work with Ohio UConn as a federal health insurance navigator and an advocate for the Somali community. At that young woman who arrived in the US in October 2015, became a US citizen this year, March 2022. In life lessons, if life lessons have taught me anything, is that we always need people from family, from friends, colleagues, classmates, neighbors, and community. I saw this from NALA members, from NALA coordinators, from our city leaders, from our community neighbors. My message today is we need to work more to impress each other, to support each other, improve our neighborhood, and collectively uplift our community. Like the wise person said, no one is rich enough to do without neighbor. We are more than good neighbors, we are a family. NALA, rising leaders, we are leaders for a better tomorrow. Thank you.
Would you give her another round of applause? Thank you, Kautar Musa, for those words. And I am sure Gioma Nawagumu was listening somewhere. Where is she? Nala. Can you stand up, please? Gioma. Gioma is the author of that Nala anthem, Raising Leaders. We are leaders for better tomorrow. Thank you, Gioma. She drove all the way from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, to attend this gathering today. Thank you, Kautar, for that quote. We are about to conclude, and we'd like to invite a leader that you know, the Deputy Director of the Department of Neighborhoods. Again, he didn't want us to put his bio on the folder. He, as humble, if not even more, like Michael Corey, graduate of The Ohio State University with Masters in Public Policy. You know, as you know, and met him, I think all of you met him at the government session where he is the primary presenter, always deals with not only the Department of Neighborhoods, but intergovernmental relations, all different city programs, oversees the New American Initiative, the Community Relations Commission, the 311 customer service, and also supports a variety of other programs within the Department of Neighborhoods and Mayor's Equity Agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Todd Defender.
Thank you very much, Abdi. It is wonderful to see everyone here this morning, or I guess we're in this afternoon now. I think first we need to offer a round of applause for Abdi. Without him, we wouldn't be here today. Thank you, sir. You know, Abdi, it was Abdi's vision to bring NALA together originally in 2018, and putting that together. You all coming together to make NALA come to life has just been wonderful to see. Now today, bringing the alumni together as our first effort to continue to engage, to continue to lift up. I know Abdi and I are talking about this is just a start. We said this is the annual summit. We intend it to be that way. Don't be surprised if you get emails about a planning committee for next year or something like that. So probably get back to him. We want to take this as our launching pad and move forward. today has just been wonderful, hearing all this great information. I know I'm kind of tired out from just hearing and trying to process through. I mean, you had this tremendous panel this morning, just how authentic and genuine everyone was and what they were sharing. And then Michael's wonderful, talking about his personal story. And I appreciate, the story here, just hearing about the experience coming, path to the United States and joining an area commission, being involved. And, Director Williams Scott this morning running through how many folks here, I know you're all doing things, but just highlighting just a few of the many folks who are on commissions, civic associations, now working with the city in different roles. It's just wonderful, wonderful to see all that. Michael noted, we are in some turbulent times right now. As we've seen with COVID, life can be unpredictable. Things on the other side of the earth can impact us here, very quickly. As the NALA pledge states, so thank you for your authorship of that, we need to remain steadfast to deeds that promote growth and development of all. Your rich diversity, coupled with deliberate effort and commitment to duty and collaboration, means there are no challenges that this group can't take on. I fully believe that. I mean, we've already seen that. It's exciting to see what comes next. I really encourage you to use your deep connections in the community among your fellow alumni to continue making a positive difference. Councilmember Birthday Padilla was noting before we came in that she feels that Columbus right now is like a 14-year-old, kind of a little gangly, we're growing, you're not really sure where your arm is, where your leg is, you're bumping into stuff. And we're at a time right now with all of the growth we're seeing and the growth that we will be seeing to really identify where we want this community to go. So the fact that you're here, you're preparing yourself, you're engaged and involved, it'll be so important for us in the next steps of Columbus to have you part of that. So very, very exciting. Of course, have an ask of you as we wrap up today. So the 2023 class application will be out very soon. Abdi will be sending information out. Please go ahead, send it to your networks. I know we had some young folks here today that hadn't been part of the class yet, so we'll make sure to get them, get applications in and from them. Our current cohort, they're doing tremendous work. They were over at Columbus Global Academy with some supporting their back to school efforts. I heard from Pedro Mejia, another member of the team here, who's over there. They're all high-fiving each other. They were really into it. They were really going to it. They might be giving all the other classes a run for their money in terms of kind of what they're bringing to the table. So you guys setting the standard here. Their graduation's coming up on November 16th. Love to see everyone at that graduation. Abdi will be sending out some information on that. So really, again, thank you for being here today. I encourage you to continue building on these relationships that you have created. And I'm excited to see you all back next year at our second annual Bigger, Better Than Ever Summit. But before you leave, we have one more one team building exercise for you. We want to take a group photo. So we want to have folks come up onto the stage in here. And Shelly Fisher, our photographer, she's in charge. So those slides about who has power, Shelly has the power. So thank you all for being here, and have a great rest of your weekend.